People always ask how I balance my family life with 400 shows a year. I'm just doing what I love with the people I love. It's my magic life.
I like Wes Iseli. I like everything about him.
Welcome, everyone, to the Wes Iseli podcast. Joined, of course, with his lovely co-host, Natalie. They're bringing an amazing guest from Las Vegas. He works with Penn Teller. He's worked with Piff The Magic Dragon. He's toured with the Foolers. And here he is now talking to Wesley, Matt Donnelly.
Woo! That's way better than you would have done.
That was professional. Man. That was professional. Matt, I'm telling you, I love you, man. So let me just, my first meeting you, I don't think I met you when I was on Fool Us. I don't think.
So this is the first thing I clear up with everyone, because I want to be clear that does not offend me. You absolutely did. And it's okay, because you meet about 40 people when you go on that show.
Okay.
And every, like I'm saying, like from your experience, like you have one person bring you to one area, then another person bring you to another area, and you come downstairs. And even when Andrew talks, he's surrounded by like 4 other people when he talks to every contestant before they go on air. And so I absolutely snuck some time in with you to make sure I had questions for Allison with you. And you don't remember, no one does, and it's A-okay.
So I was downstairs with Daniel K.
Yes.
And we struggled with him with his English and trying to get it. Was that you there? Was that me? You?
I believe that might have been me, or yes, it was very likely me, or me and one other person who could have been doing it. Yeah.
Wow, that really bonded me to Daniel K. I was trying to help him out because it was us with you guys, and we were all trying to.
Yeah.
All doing very bad, like Indian sign language, breaking stuff down phonetically. It was.
I remember you talking about how you started traveling with your family and like how you book all these dates and how they travel and how you school your children. I remember talking about all of that. I know a lot about you, and you don't know that I pre-interviewed you for this podcast.
Well, the first time I remember talking to you, so I hear that they're wrapping up every episode of Fool Us, and they're like doing a rundown. And I'm like, uh-oh, my episode's coming up. So I tuned in. I started listening to other episodes. And then I emailed Matt, and I'm like, please be gentle. Because it had been a long time since my thing aired, right?
Yeah.
So people's opinion of a trick, when you first see a trick, it's amazing. But after 4 months, it was something that was amazing 4 months ago. It's old hat now. So I'm like,
oh,
Matt,
absolutely.
please
Yeah.
gentle.
Yeah,
you guys are awesome. But that was my interest. That was my first introduction to you that I remember. And I'm like, dude,
not only were we gentle, you did Penn's favorite trick of the season, and then he actually started doing your trick. So I don't think you could have had a better run on Penn Sunday School. That's for sure.
So we always do this thing here. You're the first time we've had you on our podcast. So introduce you to everybody here. I know you as the Mind Noodler now. You're the Fool Us tour, the Foolers tour, all that stuff. Right. But improv comedy is where you got your start. So tell me about college days at improv and how you got to Vegas.
Well, I started improv actually when I was in high school. A guy named Michael Keefe started this thing called Improv Jam, and it was not like a school program or anything. It just was this comedy show that ran at a small theater above a coffee shop in Red Bank, New Jersey. And it was filled with high school kids every Friday, Saturday night because it was a late night thing that they could go to. Show started at like 11:30 and went to 1 a.m. And then we'd all go to the diners and stuff afterward. But I fell in love with improv. I just went to a theater and they started playing all these different theater games, and it was just the most exciting thing I'd ever seen. So I thought I have to be a part of it. And so I started taking classes and trying to get in the show, and I was terrible. So terrible that they tried to put me in one show just to say it didn't work out to get rid of me, and I still didn't go away, and all that sounds epic, but that all happened between the ages of 15 and 16 years old, and they didn't put kids in the show either.
That was early.
Yeah, it was a bunch of guys in their 20s, and so they didn't want a kid in their show. But then all of a sudden I broke through at 17, and I started performing every Friday and Saturday night for my entire junior and senior year of high school. And so I was doing those shows all the time, and I loved it.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Did you meet your wife in that? Because she's in show business as well. She does different things. How
yeah,
did you meet your wife?
That'd be later. I was actually, fast forward to I keep doing improv. I go to college. I drop out of college, but I start a comedy group, and that comedy group started performing in New York. I go to New York. The Upright Citizens Brigade moved from Chicago to New York. I started taking classes from all of them. Amy Poehler was one of my teachers, which was pretty awesome.
Yeah. Upright Citizens Brigade. You're fast forwarding over that. That's awesome. Let's stop and talk about that for a while. That's a big group.
Yeah, so I was in New York before they arrived. I was studying at Chicago's City Limits, which is an off-Broadway improv show at that point. And I learned from some great people over there. John Cameron Telfer was actually one of the best teachers I ever had, and I met him there. And then I took all my college money and dropped out of college and threw all my money into a TV pilot for improv. I wanted to create like a new, young, hip Who's Line for college kids, and turns out no one wanted to buy that at all. And so that was just another weird turn in life. But and then the Upright Citizens Brigade showed up in town, and suddenly there was just a new Kings of Improv in New York City. And there I worked with, I mean, all kinds of people, a lot of people who've worked today. A lot of people have been on sitcoms and Saturday Night Live and all this other stuff. I came up with a very cool era of comedians, and we all were so thankful that that place opened up, because I call it like Dungeons and Dragons for comedy nerds. Like, when you're talking about short form versus long form, and come from Chicago and their style of long form, boy, does no one care about that in conversation. But when you find people who do, and you find people who want to be funny in a certain way, and that's what I loved about the Upper Citizens Brigade, was that like there you discovered that improv and comedy and characters could be as stylistic as music, right? Like whenever you want to create blues or jazz or funk or pop, like you can find a group of people and create the kind of comedy that has such a specific flavor, and really let that shine. And that I think that was the coolest breeding ground for comedy, for a reason. There's a reason why a lot of my friends went on to become very successful in sitcoms and movies and things like that, is because it was an amazing time.
It seems like the word jazz magic is just in the past decade. I'm going to go out. What are you doing? A close-up set. Oh, I'm going to do some jazz magic. What is that? But with an improv background, dude, every set's different. Every table you go to is different. It's just making the moment out of it, man. Instead of just going through, some of my close-up sets are robotic. I've been doing that set since 1996, exactly verbatim. But having flow and some playtime with it.
Well, I'm still I'm still so new to magic that I don't have the ability to do jazz magic yet. So my improv stuff still shines. I'll gladly depart from my pattern, but the tricks I'm doing are the order of the tricks I'm doing. It's very rare that I'm just letting it flow from a content perspective. But where I really incorporate my improv is that I want something unique to happen in that room. So if I can divert, if all of a sudden an audience member, says something weird or gets out of line or does something, just says something random, I hit the brakes on everything, put all the light on that, and let's mess around here for a minute before I move on. And then they know that that's like definitely happening tonight and not part of my show.
That is so great. That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's
fun. A gift to be able to do.
Yeah.
I think the highest compliment I get is that if it goes so well that someone says, "Is that person a plant?" or "You must be a plant," right? Because I stopped and like made this totally random thing happen, and then I'm like, well, as much as you're taking away credit, you're actually giving me the highest compliment as well.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. That's awesome. And so Upright Citizens Brigade, please name drop. You said Amy Poehler, but who else do I know from that? Because I know that, but I don't know. I'm in the magic world, but I love comedy. I listen to podcasts. I listen to comedy all the time. I love it. But please feel free to name drop. I want to hear who you were with.
I mean, I was in a group with, Kurt Ronneler, who's now a pretty famous stand-up, Ptolemy Slocum, who's been on 1,000 TV shows, was in the Barbie movie, The Wire, Westworld, those kinds of things. He's in and my buddy Bob, who was a Daily Show correspondent for a while, and my friend Jess, who's currently writing for Night Court and a big writer. And that was just my group. And then we were with other groups at the time with like, people like, you know, Rob Riggle, Jason Mantzoukas, Ellie Kemper, Kristen Shaw, just, and it just goes on and on. There was a while where my wife and I couldn't watch TV without seeing our friends either in commercials or on the show we were watching. We went through like a period of like 10 years where we just all we did was see people we know on TV. And, and with that means I try to take my shots at it as well, I briefly got on the SNL radar, but nothing ever came through with that. I came very close to being on 30 Rock and Law and Order and all those other shows, and I booked a lot of commercials, and I was in that club with my friends, and I did those VH1 shows where you're a comedian talking about stuff all the time, and I got like right on that same kind of entryway, the same runway as my friends, but I never got to take off the way they took off, and that's just the way life works.
Do you have like a show reel? I want to see you on those talking head. I remember those VH1 shows where the comedians were on there.
If you can find them, I'm on like awesomely better videos or awesomely, one of those ones like that. Those kinds of shows.
So when you say you're on
shows
SNL,
that,
go ahead.
Those shows where you try to, get on Best Week Ever was what you do, those trial shows that VH1 used to be all on all the time kind of thing.
Well, you just put it on the background and you just walk by and you laugh.
Right.
You're doing other things that's in the background. That's how it was at my house.
Yeah.
When you say you're on SNL radar, does that mean you did a tryout or you were on a list to try out but never got to try out?
I was on a list to try out and encouraged to put a video together. I never quite put the video together that I wanted. But I was in some sketch shows and some improv shows that people would come by and take a look at. And then my friends would get on, and so I would feel discouraged because my friends got on. And so they're not going to take two big-headed big guys in 1 year or that kind of thing. And so I would get discouraged, that kind of stuff. I probably could have tried harder.
But dude, you've had an awesome run though. I mean, and doing all of that and meeting all those people and seeing all those people. Matt Donnelly. I mean, now you get to go to Vegas and hang out with Penn Teller, hang out with Piff, and you are known in that world. And it's just from one amazing world to another amazing world. And it's been pretty awesome for you. I'm outside looking in. I'm like, daggone it. Yeah.
Awesome. No. I'm a very, no. All of that the misfortune of my 20s does not mean that I don't feel very fortunate now. No, I'm a very lucky man. I'm lucky to have married a very talented wife because that's why we moved to Las Vegas. She booked Jersey Boys, and it's like whether to do a long distance relationship while we try to figure out other stuff. I really had nothing going on, so let's move to Vegas and see what happens. And so my wife was in Jersey Boys out here in Las Vegas for a while, and then
now she was on stage. She wasn't behind the scenes. Tell me more about your wife. I just know that she's in these different plays and things.
Yeah, no, she's a very talented lady. So she's on and off stage. So she was on stage for Jersey Boys, but also worked as the dance captain behind the scenes. So she knew that show inside and out, and that paid off because they just relaunched Jersey Boys, and now she's involved with the relaunching of Jersey Boys behind the scenes. And then she went from being we joke that we moved out here as basically like a comedian and a musical theater person, and now we're a clown and a magician because she's now one of the hosts of Absinthe. Over there at the Caesars. She's one of the comedy hosts there.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's awesome. Now, you have two boys.
Yep.
Do they have any interest in show businesses at all? What are their interests? How old are they?
They're 8 and 10. They do. I think it's interesting. I think we're without like trying to make comedy a currency, we accidentally have. I think since they're the children of two comedians, they do both like making people laugh and making us laugh, making each other laugh. And so maybe not necessarily like they want to be in theater, but they certainly enjoy being funny. And so we'll see if that comes. I mean, I didn't I started improv at 15, but that was like up until then, I had no discernible interest that I thought I could excel at. I really was lost and just kind of was messing around, and it was a wise ass getting kicked out of class and that kind of stuff. So, I don't know if that will take hold with them or not. I think we're both, you get scared that they want to do it. And then 2, you get kind of like, but at least I know that world and no one could give me advice when I was coming up. We could at least give them sound advice coming up, and so you kind of always I always have like a you know a duality when I feel about them being in show business.
Yeah, my mom kept giving me applications to get a real job. When I
Yeah.
meet her and she says she's a great magician, they like, are you sure that's a good choice? Are you sure? I mean, do you really want to do that? You know?
It's not a stable job. Are you sure? Yes, mom. I think he's all right. He's doing okay.
Well,
So
that's something I didn't understand until I moved to Vegas. The variety arts is different than trying to be an actor or a singer or a director or a writer. I think there are paths where you basically, in order to make good money, have to be associated with fame or attached to something that could become famous, kind of thing. And then when you come out here and work in like the circus worlds and the variety worlds, they just book and they get paid well, and they're not trying to necessarily get on TV or get a movie made of what they're doing. And that was what was so attractive about magic as a late turn in life for me, is that I really wanted to be a part of my kids' lives. And me going out to Los Angeles and trying to audition all the time or trying to write scripts so that I have to be in a writer's room out there all the time, it just felt like it was a really far-fetched dream that even if I got it would make my life harder.
Right.
And so when Penn
I get
kind
that. I mean, I think it's on the road with me all the time. I
Right.
can't imagine being on the road without him. I mean, we do so many shows.
No, and I haven't got tickets with me all the time, but the time I have had them on the road with me, it is the best. When
Because
they,
people don't understand the to and the from and the loading and the unloading sucks. The
yeah,
show is amazing.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
the job is the commute for sure.
Yeah.
And so when your kids are quote unquote helping you clean up, it's really kind of fun, uh, even if it slows it all down.
yeah.
Well, and then we get to take them, out to dinner afterwards and visit this town that we've never been in. Now the show's over. Now we take our time getting home. Now the adventure starts.
Yeah, that was a big thing of when I got to do the Foolish tour this fall. Like, it was a big bus and truck tour with all of us loading into a bus, loading off a bus, and all of our stuff coming off a truck, and then having to make sure we do sound check and run through certain elements of the show every time. And you couldn't hang out in the town.
Right.
You got to hang out around the theater. You could if you could walk to a place for an hour, then you got to take in that part of the town. When you tour solo, you get to hang out with people afterward or go somewhere during the day, that kind of thing. You're in charge of your own schedule. The Foolish Tour, I was going to all these cities, and all my podcast listeners and friends were like, "You gotta go here. We got to do this." And I kept being like, nope. You can come to the theater and say hello. That's where we're at."
So they loaded it. I mean, they had it. They had a well-oiled machine with that.
Oh, it was awesome. It was so cool to be a part of something that big. Yeah, yeah.
How many dates did you guys do?
We did 20 dates in 5 weeks.
Wow.
So who annoyed you the most? Penn was saying it was going to be Vinny.
It was.
I got more.
I was gonna say it was none of the cast, and then next question.
Okay. We've had Vinny on our podcast. Vinny's great. We love Vinny.
That's it. So it wasn't gonna be Vinny because Vinny gets his balls busted all the time and he rolls with it. So Vinny might have a different list of names than I do, but yeah, you can make fun of Vinny. You can make fun of Vinny all day long, and he doesn't care. So that was very helpful.
He's awesome. All right, so you co-host Penn Sunday School. How long have you been on with Penn Sunday School? How did that come about? So how did you go from your wife has the job, you're out there lost in Vegas, and you end up hooking up with Penn and Teller? In my mind, that's what happened. How did that happen?
So when I got to town, I tried to tackle anything that had to do with improv. So there's an improv show on Monday nights. I hit it off with them over there. I started performing a show on Monday nights. This theater called Sheer Madness opened up like a murder mystery theater, and then they decided to do a late night comedy show. I auditioned for that. I got into that. And then Wayne Brady had a show on the Las Vegas Strip, and he decided to hold auditions for a third. He has a comedy partner, but he was like, maybe we can have a third improviser join us. And so I auditioned for Wayne Brady's show, and it was like the coolest break of my life. But I got into Wayne Brady's show on the Venetian, and I was doing improv with Wayne Brady and Jonathan Mangum.
What?
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Oh, it's honestly, it's peak, right? I don't think there's any other improv show that gets 700 people a night to sell out a Vegas casino, even on Broadway or whatever. Like, so, and then you're with one of the greatest entertainers in the world, and so peak accomplishment from an improv nerd. I did it. I don't think there's a better gig in town. for an improviser. And then he closed shop. He started hosting that game show and moved to Los Angeles, and the show was closed, and the coolest break of my life was gone. And so
How long did
I only got to do it for 4 months.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Wow.
I know. It's Heartbreak City. I always say you don't turn to magic just before you turn 40 because everything went well in your life, right?
Yeah, I started out young because it wasn't looking good. I started out early.
It's like so yeah, no. So every time it seemed like I was gonna finally figure out something to do, it just never quite held. I'm very lucky. This is where the luck starts. Is that Emily Gillette, Penn's wife, went through a phase where she loved improv, and I say that because it wasn't, she's not that way now. But she went through a phase where she absolutely loved it, and so she was seeing it wherever possible, and everywhere Emily went, I was. So she finally came up to me after her birthday party at Wayne Brady's show and was like, "Hey, who are you? I keep seeing you everywhere, and you seem like you're new." And I was like, "Yeah, I just moved to town, and such and such." And she goes, "Well, I'm having a charity celebrity poker tournament at Caesars to raise money for Opportunity Village. You should host it." And I said, "You got it." And so I did that with Emily, and then she and I hit it off. And then her husband was doing Penn and Teller, and my wife was doing Jersey Boys. We called ourselves show widows. So we went to all these events and all these shows together because our significant others were out there working. And so we hit it off. And then she started inviting me to movie night, which is Penn used to have people over at his house every Tuesday night to watch and make fun of movies. And so that's where I started being a hanger-on. And, always a little chat before we went and watched the movie. And one of the chats was, "Hey, bullshit is over, but the Discovery Channel wants us to do a different science-based show. And boy, it's going to be a lot of work to do it, but I get, it's TV, so we got to do it." And I went home and I wrote an email up of like, I know I'm just a movie nighter hanger on, but I've gotten to write in New York, and I've written for a few things out here. I've never written for a TV show like this. I've certainly never written for science or documentary style shows. But can I just please intern? Can I just, be around the set? I'd get coffee. I'll do whatever. I will just do anything. And one of the people on the show was Mike Goudot, who was also a co-host of Penn Sunday School. And his wife and my wife were in Mamma Mia together. And so Goudot and I actually had already met on a Vegas visit previously before I moved to Vegas. The nicest guy. And when I moved to town, he was over at Lance Burton's show, and I would go hang out in his dressing room at Lance Burton. We would kind of just joke around and shoot the breeze. And so he piped up and said, "I know Matt. He's a nice guy, and this is how I started hanging out with you guys. I think if you're asking, I think Matt would be a good fit to have around." And so Penn and Teller said sure, and thanks to Mike Goudot, I started interning for Penn and Teller on a TV show. And then,
Wow.
Yeah. And then,
so what show? Sci-fi.
It was on a Discovery Channel show. It was called Penn and Teller Tell a Lie.
Okay.
It is. You can find episodes illegally on YouTube all the time. But the premise was that we present 6 science stories, one of which was made up.
I do remember that one. Okay, yeah.
And 6 weeks into my internship, Penn says, "Matt's pretty funny at movie night. Why don't we let him take passes at the script and see if we like it?" And I was like covered in sweat reading the email, and then I had to like go run. I literally went to the gym to like work out all of my nerves and like anxiety. I just was like, I can't possibly. But then everyone just said sure, and boom, there's a script in my inbox, and my job is to write the next pass and pass it to Teller. That's what we do. We just do your pass and pass the next person, and whoever started the pass would then look at all of them together. And so I started writing. First batch, I put in about 12 jokes into the script, and they kept 4.
So you were just a punch-up guy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then the next script came out, I put in like 14 jokes, they kept 3, But the important thing was I was trying to make sure that I wrote for Teller, that I made sure I wrote comedic things for Teller to do. In fact, one of my early notes was like, no vent dummy. In other words, Teller can't comedically just illustrate something Penn is saying. That's not Teller's job. And I was like, whoa, that seemed like a good note, you know? And, but after 2 scripts, I got a phone call from their TV manager that said, hey, Penn and Teller want to hire you officially as a writer for the show. You're no longer an intern. We're going to start paying you. And it was the coolest break ever. And I was psyched. And I was just about to get married, so it was really nice timing. And suddenly I was a writer for Penn and Teller.
Wow.
That's awesome.
I'd say congratulations, but it's old hat now. But daggone it, I'm getting like goosebumps, man. That
Just all perfectly fell into place.
I can see all the emotions, though. I can see the going home at night time passionately typing a letter to Penn. How often have I done that?
Right,
and
yeah.
I've asked you to spell check it and asked you to look it over.
Oh, yeah.
Does it look needy? Does it look this? Does it look like I'm kissing too much butt? Because when I hang out with him, we're just buddies hanging out. But when I'm typing or texting to him, I have to get her to approve everything. It's so weird.
Yes. No, Natalie, yeah, my wife did indeed delete a couple lines from my email to Penn before I sent it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah,
So crazy.
For sure.
Gotta get that second opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we found out about the television show Identity. I don't know where that falls in the timeline with To Tell a Lie. Were you involved in that?
I wasn't involved in Identity at all. I think it's before Tell a Lie, during Bullshit, and Identity, I believe, had the same executive producer, or one of the producers is Fool Us. I think Andrew, who runs Fool Us, I think was also involved in Identity.
I just found out about that. I was watching an episode. One of the guys up there was Stan Lee.
Yeah.
And it's like, one of these guys created Spider-Man.
That's too easy.
Dude, but nobody knew back then.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
So you started working on the television show. Mm-hmm. How long did that To Tell a Lie last? Just a few seasons.
6 episodes and canceled. It was again another roadblock. Another. It was a good times and then bad times thing. And then.
So then what?
Well, on the Penn and Teller timeline, nothing else happens until he starts his podcast. But I'm not even involved in that at the beginning. I just go back to being a guy who shows up at movie night, and then Godot started booking state fairs and started missing Sundays. And again, he stepped up and said, "I think Matt could fill in for me," and so I was very lucky. That's exactly what happened. So I filled in, and that was a cooler experience in that it was instant. I co-hosted 1 episode, and all of Penn's management said, you should have him on the show more often. And so, like, almost instantly, Penn made me a permanent co-host of the podcast.
Wow. What year are we talking now? What do you think that was?
I laugh because I always just say 7 or 8 years, but that's such a lie at this point. I think it might be 11 or 12 years ago.
Wow.
I've been doing that podcast forever. Yeah.
I
laugh because there's a part of me that feels like the new guy, and then it's just not true.
Yeah.
It's just the way.
So I've only heard you talk about the scoops, but I don't really know the scoops. I feel like that's a whole other world. Tell me about the scoops. And now, is that the podcast?
What's it? So I was filling in for Godot, and I was on pretty often, and then I was on often. But then I was a big podcast listener before I became a co-host at Penn Sunday School. So Penn's was one of the numerous podcasts I was listening to, and I knew that people needed more podcasts than they were getting at the time. And this is the strangest thing because I am a successful podcaster. So people ask me, like, how could I get going with podcasting? And I, again, was very lucky because around 2013, 2014, everyone was saying that podcasts were going to die, that podcasts were over. And it was the thing of like saying that, like, it's too late. We've already have, our Joe Rogans, our Mark Marons, our Bill Burrs. Go home, everyone. Go home, And I was like, gosh, that's just not true. Like, man, I need more than I have. And so I had my comedy partner, Paul, who I was always doing improv with all the time, every Monday night. and we started doing our own 2-person show called The Bucket Show. And basically, my wife was pregnant, and so I had a chat with Paul where I was like, "Look, I can't keep doing like every little show idea that everyone has in town, and I can't keep trying to do whatever." I was like, "We got to just focus up. I think we should just do a podcast and an improv show, just the two of us." And I think we should do it at least twice a week. I think that audience is out there. I think there are people not delivering enough podcasts, and so we just committed right away to doing a comedy podcast twice a week. And we actually were recording it at Penn's recording studio when we first started, and then that turned out to be a bad idea. From his podcast recording was in his home, so having an additional group roll in to record stuff just ended up being a bad idea. And so I found another audio guy who's now become like an equal co-host, Jacob the audio guy, and we just committed.
Jacob the audio guy isn't the guy from Matt King's podcast, was it?
No, that's Jacob Jacks.
That's a different Jacob. Okay. I'm just trying to put that world together, man. That's a whole nother world out in Vegas. I'm trying to connect the dots.
No, but like it was great. So like when I had kids, I couldn't go out all the time and do all the improv shows that I was used to doing. But doing a podcast twice a week with my comedy partner, we get to do all these bits and joke around and answer listener audience mail and do trivia and kind of give people a sense of what the struggling artist Vegas life is like, and not the Vegas headliner life. And people just took to it and took to our community and so because Penn Sunday School had a name, I said, "Penn, I'm going to start my own podcast. Do you want to have something to do with it or nothing?" And he goes, "Something." I said, "Okay, I'm starting a podcast with my buddy Paul." And he said, "Well, we should keep it churchy, right? Because we have Penn Sunday School." And then he said, "Ice Cream Social. You should call it Ice Cream Social." And we did, and he was right. And he created that name and that show. And so off we went. And then all the other podcast people figured it out. So then all of a sudden, your Joe Rogans, your Bill Burrs, even Penn Sunday School, and all those other people went to twice a week. And so suddenly we were just part of that noise, but we made it just before that. So we had our loyal listeners just before that hit. And so now there's so many podcasts out there, and we just feel really lucky that we found our loyal base before the big wave hit. And so Ice Cream Social, our listeners are Scoops. We have Scoop Fest every year. We do live churnouts, and we have a really cool, awesome audience that is so welcoming and kind, and it's been a nice little niche for me.
So I even got the name wrong. I was calling it the Scoops, but that's what your fans are called. But you're not affiliated with any of the big ice cream companies, correct?
Not at all. As a matter of fact, we got a cease and desist from Ben and Jerry's for one of our early logos for our podcast show when we put it on Apple iTunes, and we had to change our logo.
I remember that. That's what I was implying.
Yes.
But
it was my birthday, and my birthday was not only did I get served, so did Paul, so did Penn and Teller, so did Glenn, their manager. Like they found anyone associated with us and sent out this huge cease and desist to make us change our logo on our.
Wow.
Done. Boy, that could burn bridges real quick. Just getting cease and assist, and then Penn's like, "I want nothing to do with this. I'm out." So
exactly. Easy. It was my relief that our buddy Perry was in law school, and so I brought the cease and desist to movie night, and we all read through it together and joked and made fun of it. And it was a big relief that Penn was laughing at the cease and desist and not upset about it at all. That guy breaks NDAs left and right. So I guess it was par for the course for him. He didn't care.
But I don't know. I don't want to.
All the feelings you're feeling, I felt, my friend.
Yeah, I'm telling you. Yes, I'm from the outside looking, and I'm living through you from the outside. I don't know if you realize this or not. So, comedy improv. I want to get back to that real quick. Yeah. Have you ever? You said long form, short form, and you can really dive deep with that. Have you ever talked to David Riegel?
I have talked with David. I introduced myself to him at the Magic Castle. I caught him at a bad time. I think he just wrapped up a set or whatever. And again, no one remembers meeting me at Fool Us. So I had met him and I was trying to chat him up. But then David was hired as a consultant for P&T heading into last season's Fool Us. And so David was at a bunch of rehearsals with me at Penn and Teller. And there we really hit it off. I mean, I love David's stuff. I love the way he thinks. He's very funny. and a really smart thinker. And plus, it was really great talking to him because he worked on Carbonaro Effect, and so he had a lot of great stories of working on that show.
Well, see, that's where I met him. That's where I met him. I was on season 2 there. But he has the Chicago, right? I think he came up in Chicago in the improv circuit.
I think so. We did not. That never came up when we were talking.
Wow.
I know, but we're
really mesh on.
We're problem solving and just working on tricks and that kind of stuff. But it'll come up again. I'll run into him again. Actually, now I know that for a fact. I'd heard that, but now that you say it, I'll make sure to bring it up next time I run into him.
Yeah, because I mean, he was saying during COVID he got together with all of his old improv people and just got over Zoom and just did some improv together, and it was just fun. After 15, 20 years, it just felt like putting an old glove on and just hanging out with the boys and girls and just improv and over class.
Yeah, like that's happened over COVID as well. Like the group that I was in when I was 15, 16, including I guess because we did encourage name dropping on this show, right? Including
yes, please.
Lorene Scafaria was actually part of my high school improv thing, and she's now a big director out in LA. She directed that last Jennifer Lopez movie and Susan Sarandon movie before that. She's a very talented director, and so it was so funny that she joined our little Zoom to talk about our high school improv at the time. But that was fun.
Wow, that's really cool. So you start Magic. Tell me about your start in Magic, because did you start Magic? I don't know. When did you start Magic? I don't even know where to start, because you're telling jokes and adding jokes to scripts. Were you doing Magic fiddling around then?
No. In fact, my strength in the writer's room was not having a variety background, not having a Magic background, because they would argue like, oh, everyone knows about this, everyone knows about daylight seance, or everyone knows about whatever, and I go like, what are you talking about? and so my job in the writer's room is to be like, no one knows about that, or just to write like, hey, it'd be really cool. I don't know how to levitate a chicken, but we should have a levitating chicken in this bit, and then Teller and Penn would brainstorm about how to do a levitating chicken, that kind of a thing. So no, it was season 4. I was a writer on Fool Us, starting every American season. So starting season 2, I was a writer and specifically assigned to the host and not working with Penn and Teller. And I was interviewing everyone to prep them for their host, to make sure that they also my number one job is to make sure that they don't just stare at Penn and Teller while Penn and Teller talk, that you're talking to a star on television. Make sure you get that second moment and have a good interview. And I basically hit a moment of frustration. I was like, every single person I'm talking to is basically just talking about how they've had a full-time job since they were 15 years old or 12 years old or something like that. And they don't struggle, and they all seem to work full-time, and they're all not famous. And man, trying to make a comedy is hard. And I always go to Penn's dressing room in between tapings. We do two tapings a day. And I always pop into Penn's dressing room in between tapings. And I just expressed frustration. And I said, like, all these guys make a full-time living in Magic. I should just learn like 4 tricks, right? I should just learn like 4 tricks and try to do what they're doing. And he laughed. And he said, it's harder than you think, but you also might be better at it than you think. And it was that little turn really authentically went off in his head. And then he became obsessed with it. He just started planning different ways that he thought I could do magic. He thought it'd be funny. And I think I'm very lucky in that Penn's not a lifelong magician, and that Penn was a juggler who converted to magic to create Penn and Teller. And I think he and I were obviously, we had a rapport as podcast co-hosts and everything else. He knew me, and I think he really related to the idea that I could come to magic differently the way he came to magic differently. And so he spent that whole season just brainstorming ways for me to learn magic. And it was overwhelming and exciting, and I had no time to do it. But I thought I'll mess with Penn, because Johnny Thompson, who was the judge on Fool Us and a legend in magic, before he passed.
Behind the scenes judge. People that don't know the show, he's behind the scenes. He's like a voice in the sky. You don't see Johnny Thompson go.
You don't see Johnny Thompson, but he's officially the guy in the first seasons. He's the guy that says, now it's Mike Close, but there's a magician who listens to every word Penn and Teller says and says whether or not Penn and Teller are fooled in the conversation. So that's why you don't see a big debate happen when they talk to the contestants, because the actual game show element has already happened before they speak to the magician, which is a hard nuance to get across to people. And so I go, I bet Johnny would teach me a trick, because he's so generous. And I think it'd be really funny if I learned something from Johnny that was kind of killer and surprised Penn and maybe Teller with it or whatever. So I started going over Johnny's house and learning magic, and then I was working on 50 Shades the parody over at Bally's, and that show was closing because it was 50 Shades the parody at Bally's, and so I was gonna work on the show Opium at the Cosmopolitan for Spiegel World, and I had a 5-month gap, and I thought, shoot, I need to keep feeding my children, and I can't get a great job that I'll quit, because I'll definitely want to work on this show for these big behemoths in Vegas, and a crappy job won't do. And so I thought, why don't I see if let me ask the universe. Let me try to do a crowdfunder. I'm going to say I'm going to learn 7 tricks from 7 magicians and do a show. If you want to see that happen, here's the way to fund it. And so I did a crowdfunder, and I went to Johnny, and I was like, Johnny, I know you've been working with me casually in your living room, but I'm getting a real show budget together. Would you officially teach me a trick for this show? He said yes. And then I said, well, if Johnny said yes, I bet Penn will say yes. So I went to Penn and said, Penn, I'm crowdfunding this show. Johnny's going to teach me a trick. Will you teach me one trick? And Penn said yes. And I said, well, if Penn said yes, that means if Johnny and Penn said yes, then Teller will say yes. And if Teller says yes, everyone will say yes. And so I went to Teller third and said, Johnny is going to teach me a trick. Penn is going to teach me a trick. Will you teach me just one trick? You don't have to apprentice me, nothing. Will you just teach me one trick? And he said yes. And so after that, it was Piff the Magic Dragon, my friend Eric Diddleman, Brian Brushwood, and Matt King. And they all taught me magic. And then I was just going to put together for that show, just for fun. And just to get through that gap. Because the Spiegel World show was supposed to be employment. That's supposed to be a part of that show. And then they changed my contract at the last minute to only be a 6-week contract and not a year-long contract, which is a major red flag, major kick in the shins from a dad perspective. And Piff the Magic Dragon saw my magic show from the crowdfunder and said, you have an act. I just lost this person in my show. When I do touring shows, will you open for me? And I mean, stupid. That story is stupid. If in case anyone's listening and it was like, no way. It came about that quickly and that easily. The answer is yes, and yes, I know. It's so dumb. I get it.
It's so awesome is what it is. That's amazing.
Because Piff at the time was touring comedy clubs, and I had just been doing comedy for over 20 years, about 25 years. And so if I was going to have a learning curve in any environment, comedy clubs was ideal. And so I spent 2 years opening for Piff and comedy clubs, and then just haven't stopped, and just keep booking and keep working ever since. And just out of nowhere, just was a total, high gear, pedal to the metal acceleration of, if you're going to try magic, go ahead and do magic. It's dumb.
So what was it like opening for Piff?
Oh, loved it.
Yeah. But all right, so do you remember the first time opening for Piff?
This Indianapolis Comedy Club. It was converted from a Mexican restaurant into a comedy club, so it had great guacamole. And Piff went over through all my acts, and he was like, "What else you got?" And I was like, "Piff, you saw every trick I learned." I said, "I just learned 7 tricks for 7 shows," And so he he went through my act and kind of like put the order of my stuff that he liked in order, and I had to rewrite the routine that Brian Brushwood gave me, um, uh, and convert it into a different kind of drawing prediction duplication thing that was shorter. And I did that on the plane ride with my buddy RJ, who's helped me. He's actually the secret to my success, in that all these people worked with me, but he was an experienced magician who would work with me all the time. They didn't want to apprentice me; they wanted to teach me a trick. And so RJ was someone I brought to all of my sessions because he was an experienced magician who worked for Cirque du Soleil, and so he became my director and my translator and my practice person. And so he and I rewrote the routine on the plane ride, and I was doing it for the first time at the comedy club. But yeah.
So when you're getting these, say Matt King is teaching you a trick,
Yeah.
Are you specifying, hey, I need a stage trick, I need something for a show, or
Penn. So yeah, there's another story in there, is that my dad was visiting. He came to Penn Sunday School. Again, remember, I was so busy that I didn't take him up on his first offer during Fool Us. My dad was visiting, and Penn brought us to his house for lunch. And when he was having lunch with us, he again was like, I really think it'd be funny if you, and he started going into it again in front of my dad. And he said, well, first thing you want to do is don't get caught up doing cards. There are 12-year-olds who can do stuff that you can't do for the rest of your life. He goes, and magicians get lost in cards, and cards don't always play big. You want to do everything above the waist, so that no matter what size stage you're playing, you can do everything above the waist and skip cards. And those were his two big pieces of advice to me to start. So as I started working with people, and when I got in the car, my dad goes, "You just got basketball advice from Michael Jordan. Are you going to take it?" It's like, so now my dad's in, now Penn is in. I have to learn magic, right? I can't even weasel my way out of it.
wow.
And so, yes, so I went to people with the idea that I had no cards above the waist, and that I was going to do kind of a hillbilly character. I thought it'd be easier to write for a character than to find my own voice while also learning magic. And so I wrote this character called Hillbill the Psychic Hillbilly, and I performed in my coveralls, and I did the first year or two of magic I was in character, and then I, for a variety of reasons, just dropped the character and just kept the overalls and kept performing.
So that's you. So it's Matt Donnelly in bib overalls now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So did you specify that you need just mentalism tricks from these 7 people?
No. And the mentalism thing just kind of is this is going to sound terrible to very talented people, but if you're starting that late, your finger flicking and your arm stuff, mentalism is a lot more turnkey for someone who's a natural performer. So I was a very experienced performer, and so a lot of mentalism tricks are self-working. So I think I turned to mentalism more early, and then on top of that, could make jokes more easily, because someone who should be the dumbest guy in the room ends up being the smartest guy in the room. Had a nice little arc to me, and so I initially was very much kind of a parody of a mainstream mentalism show at the start. But I switched from the Psychic Hillbilly to the Mind Noodler to be a little more loose with the definition, and so I could incorporate magic more. And so I've incorporated more and more magic and less mentalism into my act as it progresses.
That's awesome. I mean, you performed near me. I mean, within a couple hours of me, and I still want to see this act. Do you have footage of it anywhere online? I saw your full spot.
I have a set I did in Austin. It's like a 20-minute set I have on my YouTube page.
Okay, all right, I'll find that. Find that.
But where do you live? I should come back to where you live.
I'm in Virginia. You were in Maryland. You did the Elkton, Maryland.
I did 7 spots around the Maryland area last summer. We could have made one of those work, but
yeah,
I'll come back.
Us. We have 183 shows June through August usually, because we have all the resorts. We do twice a week at the resorts, and then we have county fairs, and we have company parties and library.
I get it. You're busy.
No, but summers are awful. Come out here in January, February. That's what I need to see you. That's when we have time off.
The truth is, the problem is that I will is the answer number one. And the truth is that my brother lives in Maryland, and the reason why I book my shows in the summer in Maryland is because he has a boat on the Chesapeake, and so I bring my family out, and we go on this boat on the Chesapeake, and so I just book the gigs so that I can justify my trip out to see my fam and hang out. So undoubtedly, I'll be back there this summer, but I will also try to book it. I'll try to book a gig near there in the fall or winter for you.
So do you do comedy clubs still?
I do. Some comedy clubs are very snotty about having magic in it, and some are very cool with it. And so I never know what's going to do it. But that's post Foolers tour. That has kind of been my new goal, is to start finding ways to book comedy clubs and comedy venues. Because at first I just want to get my reputation up, and so I performed at all of the magic venues, the kind of well-known magic venues. And I still go back to those places. I love it there. I like all of the Mystique Dining. I like I've been to Magic Castle 4 times. I like Chicago Magic Lounge, going back there, House of Cards, those type of places. Yeah. I did House of Cards. I'm gonna try to do it again. I did it once before. I think I'm gonna do it again. It's fascinating. I loved doing the Nashville House of Cards. It's a totally different feel than the other places. It's a different town,
Wow.
different audiences. So I still like doing that, but my goal for like me, how to grow the business of me and where I think I can thrive is, I want to find a way to get back into comedy clubs. It's hard to get into comedy clubs without being on TV, and that's the trick of it. But
you've been on Fool Us.
Yeah,
you wrote. I mean, you just you know how to write that up. You know how to write up something that sounds good.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it. And I'll be on Fools again this season.
The Funny Bone, 45 minutes from my house. Richmond Funny Bone. Come on.
All right, I'll look it up. I'll add it to my list of possible venues.
Do it.
Richmond.
Yes, man. So how about the Foolers tour? Is there any talk about bringing it back? Is it just on hiatus for now, or is it done, or what's up? It is
on hiatus for now. I wasn't. I was just a pretty face, so I'm not necessarily kept in the loop on all this stuff. But I think it's on hiatus right now. Big theater tours that aren't concerts right now are all kind of in a weird space at the moment. It seems like bands are the only thing really selling big numbers at the moment. That's even true in Vegas right now. And so I think we're just kind of, I believe, I'm just guessing that we're speculating for the tide to turn on that a little bit before we go out again. So we'll see.
Dude, seeing from the outside looking in, being jealous, but seeing you do Penn and Teller's like upside down straitjacket escape. I mean,
yeah.
Seeing stuff like that, and seeing you guys getting permission to do that, blessing to do that, and them producing that all for you. That's an all time for me. That's the coolest thing in the world. Yeah.
No, of course, of course. There are a lot. People have been magicians a lot longer than I have, and so for me to be the one to do it, I'm sure is a big fu point for them. But
no, it wasn't that. It was, I was living through you, man. I'm like, God. When I was doing research for Fool Us, I would literally get emotional seeing people win, because I'm like, I feel what they felt. Oh my gosh. I got goosebumps watching people win.
Oh yeah.
And then seeing do that, I was getting goosebumps. My buddy's winning. My buddy, look at that. That's the upside down straitjacket escape that I watched on repeat at 12 years old in my basement. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. I think that was the really fun part of working on it, right? Because then post-pandemic, I started working with Penn and Teller a lot more closely on their actual stage show and their tricks for Fool Us. Before then, I was just a writer guy that they would run a couple of, if they needed a writer, they'd run things by me or bring me for one rehearsal here, one rehearsal there. Post-pandemic, I became a guy that was at their rehearsals and helping them with the show and stuff. And so what ended up happening on that was I was like, oh, actually, it's really good they have me here, because getting Penn and Teller tricks and thinking all of the ins and outs of it, the nuances of it, or the aesthetics of it, I was very much a Penn and Teller translator in rehearsals with the director in terms of like what they were thinking, what they like, why they never did this, why they wouldn't do that, and so I quickly became behind the scenes like a P&T curator while other people worked their material. Like I kind of understood Penn and Teller's side of like, wait, we don't just hand this over to people for a reason, and then I became an advocate for the Penn and Teller aesthetics with different elements of different tricks we were doing in the show.
So me working at a magic shop in the 90s while I was going to college for marketing, there was a lot of David Copperfield clones because that Copperfield special had just come out.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So now you know nothing about magic. You're thrown into that world under Penn and Teller. How hard is it for you to not take a piece of their stuff for your own? Like, oh my gosh, that I know how to do that trick, or I could use that in my show, but I'll tweak it just a little bit. But you kind of, that's got to be a fine line because people want to be a clone.
Oh, without a doubt.
Like,
I think from a writing perspective, it's hard. I think there's a lot of tricks that if you listen, you realize that I've written certain elements for Penn that I'm just saying. That like he has a certain word style, length style. He's intellectual. He likes his tricks to have an intellectual twist, an intellectual entry point for the audience. And so I tend to write very comedically, but often heavily premised going into each trick that I'm doing. I think that reflects on Penn and Teller tremendously because of it. And from an actual trick and methodology standpoint, one is that Penn and Teller with me are incredibly generous. If I say I was thinking about using this element or that element, a lot of times they say, go for it, and here are the do's and don'ts of doing that.
wow. Okay. Yeah.
But there's the line is that they are a production, and that even the smallest tricks have production elements that can't. I mean, literally, they're a four-handed organization on stage, let alone however many hands off stage. So when you are a two-handed organization, a lot of the stuff that they do, you just simply can't do. So
yeah.
It makes it easy. And I don't think I want to just be a PNT ripoff organization anyway. I'm also
maybe I didn't say it right, but I mean,
no. I don't mean to accuse you of that.
And I see that you're getting it directly from them. So to emulate them and to, the cover, you don't want to be. Yeah.
The answer is, I guess the short answer is I do, right? I do think of their approval, and I do think of them wanting to do stuff, and I do, I do want them to do it. But then also there is this element of fool us and trying to be on Fool Us again, right? So sometimes I am working on something, and if it is cool, right, I keep it away from them because I might pitch it to them to be on the show. I'm on the show this season, and that's something that Penn points out, where he literally in his bus was like, "You work with us. When did you have time to work on this trick?" Because we're working all the time on their stuff, and so that part's up there as well. So whatever. If I have something really sneaky I'm working on, because I'll be on there twice, and then you say you get goosebumps relating to people who get that trophy. I don't know that feeling, and so there's a part of me that still is like, one day I could maybe try to get that trophy, but I haven't come up with anything too deceptive yet.
Well, and the other thing is, I mean, yeah, you're with them all the time, trying to come up with something. My whole thing about fooling them is, how do I know what you know? There's no way I could know what Penn and Teller know. I don't. Where do you start, man?
No, there's
40-year head start on me.
Yeah, I know that show and I love that show, so we can easily get into just minutiae of that show and get lost here in this pod. But there's two ways to play the game. One is to have some proprietary knowledge of something they don't have proprietary knowledge of, right? And the other is that there's definitely 2 or 3 ways to do it, and they can only guess one. And so a good way to go back and look at Foolers is to figure out, was it how many bites of the apple, or was it actually a proprietary knowledge thing? Because sometimes it's one or the other.
Yeah. Crazy, man. Dude, time has flown by. I could talk to you for another 6 hours. Matt, you're awesome. Thank you so much, man. This was fun getting to know you more. We'll have to do it again. I still owe you a beer when we go out to Vegas, because he said such nice things about me and propped me up that day when Penn was going to review my trick. I was freaking out that day.
It's a pretty cool thing. I've never given them a trick, so you have that on me, my friend.
Hey, thank you for everything. Thanks for being on. Only thing left we have to say is see you next week.
Check us out online at wesisley.com and patreon.com/Wes_Isley for behind-the-scenes videos, blooper videos, never-before-seen footage, discounts on merchandise, magic trick tutorials, and more. That's Wes Iseli, spelled Wesiseli.